The making of Siamese Dream, Smashing Pumpkins' breakthrough album, was troubled to say the least, especially for Billy Corgan. As the core songwriter and face of the band, he had a lot on his plate. Coming off the band's 1991 debut, Gish, they were signed to a major label. The follow-up had to take the Smashing Pumpkins to the next level. With this insane amount of pressure, the band began to fall apart at the seams. Billy Corgan mentally broke down, barely functional at points during the making of Siamese Dream. The perfectionist inside really got the best of him. He couldn't settle for anything less than a masterpiece. In the end, this difficult period of time would pay off extremely well for Billy and his band. So let's go back in time and discuss the Smashing Pumpkins, their early years, and the Siamese Dream era that nearly made Billy Corgan lose his mind. Billy Corgan grew up in a very musical family, so it only made sense he would gravitate toward music himself. Acquiring his first guitar at around 14, he consistently practiced for years, eventually getting to the point in which he was not only competent, but incredibly skilled. Billy officially kicked off his music career in the mid-80s with Hexen, a high school metal band with buds that wasn't taken too seriously. Following Hexen, Billy joined a local band called The Marked around '86. Though short-lived, this was his first real band, introducing him to a whole new world of possibilities. The Marked would dissolve by the end of 1986, which crushed Billy, triggering a bout of depression, but ultimately he was still eager to play music and grow creatively. Between '86 and '88, Billy found himself at a crossroads in life. Now without a band and unsure of where to go next, this is around the time he met James Iha. Both being musicians from the suburbs of Chicago, the two hit it off instantly. At the time, James was a part of a local band by the name of Snake Train, which, just like The Marked, was bound to fall apart. Upon the conclusion of Snake Train, Billy and James got serious about writing together. In 1988, they began playing at local bars and clubs, which is when D'Arcy Wretzky came into the picture. She and Billy got into a heated argument, and somehow, this led to her joining the band. Not long after, drummer Jimmy Chamberlain joined up as well. Now with a full lineup, the Smashing Pumpkins was born. Almost immediately, the band was off to the races with endless ambition. This Chicago-based band would take the rock world by storm in just a few short years. In the late 80s, the Smashing Pumpkins were already starting to attract some local buzz. They had a decent batch of tracks and an undeniably unique sound. In 1989, the local indie label Limited Potential released the band's first single, an early version of I Am One. The following year in 1990, the band had caught the interest of Sub Pop. They agreed to put out a single with them, being Tristessa, but ultimately the band didn't sign with Sub Pop, instead going with Caroline Records. In late 1990, the Smashing Pumpkins went down to Wisconsin to begin recording their debut album, Gish. Released on May 28, 1991, and produced by the legendary Butch Vig, Gish was an immensely strong debut. The band masterfully combined both psychedelia and hard-hitting rock, which immediately set them apart from their peers. This was a band with not only raw talent, but a vision, predominantly Billy Corgan's, as he wrote every track here aside from one. It was very clear from the get-go the Smashing Pumpkins was Billy's band. He was the creative force behind their sound, being somewhat of a control freak. However, this approach would soon take its toll on Billy's mental health. To go over some highlights from Gish, there's a few that immediately jump off the page. I Am One opens the album, showing off the band's rock edge. It's dark, it's loud, it's in your face, foreshadowing a sound the band would explore quite a bit later on. While a moment like Rhinoceros is psychedelic and dreamy, very slow and lush, being a pretty gorgeous track that's easy to fall in love with. Shiva merges the intensity of I Am One and the dreaminess of Rhinoceros, really displaying the band's versatility. They could rock out so hard, but also envelop you in their slumberous introspection. Snail is another moment with this quiet to loud tendency the band had already mastered. Sound-wise, very much in line with the upcoming wave of bands deemed as grunge. The Smashing Pumpkins found themselves heavily compared to these bands, but shook the label off very quickly. They were coming from a totally different place in both music and style. But initially, the label of grunge being thrust upon them didn't seem to hurt, as it brought them a legion of new fans. Smashing Pumpkins' debut album Gish did pretty well commercially, cracking the Billboard 200 and solidifying the band's growing relevance. The record is held in high regard, largely considered one of the band's best. I can't argue with that at all. It's alternative rock done masterfully, showcasing some very strong musical chops and raw passion. Following Gish, the band released a couple EPs, including Lowell and Peel Sessions. This brings us to the Siamese Dream era of Smashing Pumpkins history. An era, for as monumental and successful as it was, also proved to be equally stressful and tumultuous. Going into Siamese Dream, Smashing Pumpkins were signed to Virgin Records, a major label. This was a significant moment in the band's history, in which everything changed. As exciting as it was to finally be on a major label, the pressure was immense. The band's follow-up to Gish had to be successful. This had to be the album that brought the band to the next level, and if it didn't, this very well could have been the end for Smashing Pumpkins. There was a lot riding on the release of Siamese Dream. Let's get into it. In 1992, Billy Corgan was in a creative dry spell. The enormous pressure of following up Gish led him to a very dark place mentally. Corgan was certainly known to suffer from depression prior to this, but the circumstances at hand made it so much worse. The idea of ending himself not only crossed his mind, but consumed him for a period of time. Needless to say, Billy was not in a good headspace. His band was beginning to fall apart as well, with inner turmoil behind the scenes reaching an all-time high. But this is when a real breakthrough occurred. Billy decided to channel this darkness into song. Today was the end result, which would eventually become the record's biggest hit. All of a sudden, the writer's block Corgan was facing slowly lifted, and the arduous process of writing and recording Siamese Dream had begun. In late 1992, the band would move down to Georgia to begin recording at Triclop Studio, with Butch Vig on production once again. Right out of the gate, a number of issues plagued the Pumpkins as work on Siamese Dream began. James Iha and D'Arcy Wretzky had a romantic relationship for a few years that recently ended, creating a rather uneasy working environment. Drummer Jimmy Chamberlain was also deep into drugs, which made him incredibly unreliable and generally made things more difficult. The band found themselves working around his schedule as he would disappear for days with no explanation. Aside from this, the musical aspect of Siamese Dream came together fairly easily. The band rehearsed extensively before entering the studio. Billy Corgan wrote just about everything both lyrically and musically for Siamese Dream. He also slaved over the recording itself. The record famously utilizes extensive guitar overdubs, giving it its iconic sound. Songs like Hummer and Soma are said to have somewhere near 40 guitar tracks. Corgan was truly aiming for the stars, and with Butch Vig at the helm, the pair brought these songs to a new level. The perfectionist in Billy Corgan really came out during the making of Siamese Dream. He even went as far as re-recording most of D'Arcy's bass tracks, as they didn't reach his high standards. This record had to be great by any means necessary. If he had to record everything himself, it didn't matter. At a certain point, Corgan had to get serious about the lyrics. A lot still needed to be done. Here's a quote from Billy describing this process. "Each morning, I wake up around 8 a.m. and get right to work. Since all the songs are written, musically speaking, my entire focus is on finishing the much discussed and much fraught over lyrics. Songs where the lyrics are pretty much finished even remain a stoic concern, as I continue to pick over each and every line until it seems there's no more doubt." Corgan utilized a typewriter, which didn't seem to help matters. In fact, it only made him more hyper-aware of potential shortcomings. He was absolutely overcome by self-doubt, constantly writing and rewriting songs. Nothing he wrote seemed good enough. Issues continued to arise as work on Siamese Dream continued. Jimmy disappeared for as long as 3 days, which really worried the band. He eventually did return, but a level of resentment began to set in. D'Arcy, James, and Billy were fighting a lot as well, even to the point of not being able to be in the same room together. The writing and recording of Siamese Dream nearly broke the band and Billy Corgan himself. The self-imposed perfectionism that consumed Corgan's mind really destroyed his health for a time. He was able to bounce back from this tumultuous period with a great deal of therapy, but still, Siamese Dream really tested his sanity. When everything was said and done, the final record was truly something to behold. An artistic achievement that would bring the band much-deserved acclaim and success. Now that I've gone over the troubled making of the album, let's go over the songs of this masterpiece. The record opens with Cherub Rock, the ultimate middle finger to the music industry. Billy writes about how indie bands trade in their artistic integrity for sales. His lyrical approach here is very snarky and sarcastic, coupled with the classic high-octane rock the Pumpkins did so well. You immediately take note of the thick, layered guitar tone and Jimmy Chamberlain's amazing drumming. Quiet is massive. Tone-wise, a driving moment that's as visceral as it is vulnerable. Billy writes of his childhood and the pain he endured in his youth. Today is the track that brought the Pumpkins to arena rock status. Lyrically, Billy Corgan is truly at rock bottom, one of his lowest points in life, as he attempts to convince himself today is the greatest day ever, because tomorrow he may no longer be here. The ultimate depression track that, while a bit sarcastic, strikes an emotional chord for many. As Hummer was coming to life during rehearsal, Billy developed a massive headache. But despite the pain, he pressed forward, as the track contained an undeniable majesty. Hummer is dynamically all over the place. The band's sole goal here is to create a mood. They definitely accomplished that here, and it's one of the record's greatest feats. Rocket was the first song Billy wrote for Siamese Dream, dating back to 1991. Another moment featuring a wall of guitars, layered so masterfully you can't help but admire the genius production. Disarm comes next, which is without a doubt the emotional centerpiece of Siamese Dream, a track entirely acoustic, feeling very intimate and personal. A very powerful track, another one detailing the abuse Corgan endured as a child. It's almost hard to listen to, with such disturbing subject matter, but moments like this are what make Siamese Dream such a legendary record. It's not afraid to go there. Soma shows off the band's clear shoegaze influence, which was all over their debut. This track is over 6 minutes and takes a while to gain momentum, but when it does, the payoff is immense. Geek USA alone contains almost 30 guitar tracks, making it one of the beefiest cuts of the record. One of the defining rockers of Siamese Dream, boasting an amazing guitar solo and smashing drums from Jimmy Chamberlain, but it also knows when to bring the energy to a crawl. Mayonnaise is regarded as one of the band's best songs. Though the track is relatively vague lyrically, Billy's words still resonate so strongly. Instrumentally, easily one of the greatest moments of the record. A rather long-winded track, but every single second counts here. The following 3 tracks of Siamese Dream range from the dreamy Space Boy and Sweet Sweet to the intense Silver F. Luna properly closes the record, a ballad that never treads into cheesy territory. A very reflective way to end things, as Billy writes about being in love with someone that doesn't love him back. David Ragsdale contributes violin here, which gives the track a very nice, serene tone. This album doesn't have a weak spot on it. Every single track serves its purpose. Siamese Dream is an hour of classic alternative rock, containing both serenity and rage, never growing stale. Certainly a landmark album for the band and rock in general, making the Smashing Pumpkins a household name with staying power. Siamese Dream was a huge hit for Smashing Pumpkins, reaching number 10 on the Billboard 200, and spawning hit singles such as Cherub Rock, Today, and Disarm. The record eventually sold 6 million copies, and is one of the band's most successful. Siamese Dream was a colossal success for the Pumpkins, but it nearly broke the band and Billy Corgan's brain. The painstaking recording process for this album is the stuff of legends. As difficult as it was to bring Siamese Dream to life, the end result exceeded all expectations in both quality and commerciality. Even though this record nearly destroyed Billy Corgan and the band, the music truly speaks for itself. Definitely one of the best albums of the 1990s that still holds up insanely well. Thanks for watching. What's your favorite album by the band? Comment down below. Anyway, I hope you have a great day. More music-related content coming soon here on The Music Narrative.